Hello and welcome to CHSR 97.9 FM's Canadian federal election coverage. I'm your host and CHSR's broadcast journalist, Aidan Keenan, reporting from Fredericton, New Brunswick. This program is part of the #AltElxn 2025 National Election Project, coordinated by the NCRA/ANREC. This initiative is supported by the Covering Canada Election 2025 Fund, in partnership with the Public Policy Forum, Rideau Hall Foundation, and the Michener Awards Foundation. For more information on the NCRA's AltElxn 2025 coverage, please visit altelxn.ca, that's ALTELXN.ca. A quick disclaimer too, that the content in this show reflects local perspectives and does not imply an endorsement of any political party. Over the next half hour, I'm going to bring you stories and issues related to the election that are centered around our community, Fredericton. Before getting to the stories, here's some information about voting that you need to know. On Monday, you can vote from 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. By law, your employer must give you 3 consecutive hours to vote during that period. If you do not have 3 consecutive hours off of work, your employer must give you enough time off to equal 3 consecutive hours for voting. So, if you would normally clock out at 6 p.m., your employer needs to give you at least half an hour off to meet the 3-hour minimum, letting you off work from 5:30 to 8:30. To vote, you only need a piece of ID with your name, photo, and current address. The ID can be issued by the federal, provincial, territorial, or local government. If you don't have one of those pieces of ID, you can also vote with 2 other pieces of ID as long as they both have your name on them and at least one of them has your current address. If either of those are not an option, your third choice is to declare your identity and address in writing and have somebody who knows you vouch for your identity. The person vouching must be assigned to the same polling station as you. There are 8 candidates in the Fredericton-Oromocto riding. Pam Allen LeBlanc represents the Green Party. Dominic Carty represents the Canadian Future Party. Brandon Ellis represents the Centrist Party of Canada. Nikki Lyons-McFarlane represents the New Democratic Party, or NDP. Brian McDonald represents the Conservative Party. Heather Michaud represents the People's Party. David Miles represents the Liberal Party. And June Patterson represents the Communist Party. For more information on any of these candidates, please check out the Elections Canada website. Just type in your postal code and select the blue "Who are the candidates in my electoral district" option. Now for a few stories. This first one is pretty long, so buckle in. With the Canadian federal election scheduled for April 28, 2025, voters have been bombarded by various campaigns and promises from candidates in their respective ridings and the leaders of the main federal parties. However, those who support and advocate for Fredericton's most vulnerable, people who are low income or homeless, have their own perspective on the election and which issues to pay attention to. Conveniently, the concerns of these advocacy groups mirrored one of the most contentious issues going into the election: housing. Available and affordable housing is a rising issue in Fredericton. The city announced a vacancy rate of 0.9% in January, meaning that less than 1% of apartments are available for new tenants or tenants looking to get out of an exploitative situation. Here is Nicola Taylor, the chair of Acorn NB, the New Brunswick branch of a national union that advocates for low-income people, describing how housing is often seen as an investment tool rather than a human right.
But right now what we're seeing is that people are seeing this as an investment tool, and that's wrong. And because they're seeing it as an investment tool, that's why we're seeing these massive rent increases, displacements of tenants, and affordability in the housing going right downhill. Financialised landlords, corporate landlords, they're going to keep jacking up rents. And actually, one of their tactics is to let them go downhill so they don't repair them, they don't maintain them, and then they get out the old tenants to bring new ones to jack the rent. And that's what's been happening consecutively over the years. We may not have noticed it as much until the pandemic hit. That was when rent gouging really took place. But it has been happening for a long time.
Nicola noted that Acorn has a solution to what is an admittedly dire assessment of Fredericton housing.
So one of our goals as Acorn Canada is to have the federal government build minimum 50,000 social housing units a year for the next 10 years.
Nicola then explained why social housing is Acorn's priority.
Social housing then is for low-income families or people. In Canada, they stopped building it. The government stopped taking account of it in the 90s. So they've just let the private sector take hold of the housing. And that's why we've seen this depletion of social housing in general and affordability. So what the government has to do is, as soon as a building comes up for sale, first dibs to buy that building should either go to not-for-profits, co-ops, land trusts, or tenants themselves if they're able to do that. And usually when you look at these instances, for example like co-ops, you will find that house will be really well maintained, really well looked after. That yes, for sure they'll have to put the rent up every now and again, but it's not ridiculously high, you know.
Co-op and social housing aren't the only solutions to housing affordability. According to Perry Kendall, the CEO of Habitat for Humanity New Brunswick, new construction and facilitating individual home ownership is another solution that faces some challenges.
Since 2020, residential construction price index has risen 51%. Fees and taxes on new residential construction have climbed over 30% across Canada. And that's not even considering this potential impact of tariffs that's coming into play. So the cost to build has drastically increased. Simply put, that the vast majority of renters across New Brunswick and for that matter across Canada see owning a home as out of reach. Our view is that everyone deserves a safe and decent place to live, and affordable home ownership is an important component of that.
Perry elaborated on what could alleviate those challenges facing affordable home ownership and what Habitat hopes to see after the election.
We are asking for tax relief on nonprofit housing providers. We're pleased to see that there is measures included in the major party platforms with relief from the GST for every 100 homes that Habitat builds for low to moderate income families. We could increase the number of homes by another 5 to 13 more. So that's the first. Secondly, simply put, Habitat does know how to get homes built across Canada. We're in 40 locations across Canada. We're asking for dedicated grants from the federal government to help us create more homes that can be available to families who need that hand up to transition to affordable home ownership.
Perry also described the impact that affordable home ownership has on people.
We currently have just over 90 families in homes across the province, and the impact that Habitat has had on their lives has been huge. So whether that be children who were having respiratory issues because of poor air quality in the homes that they were renting, whether that be families who had a person with disabilities living in an inappropriate setting and now in a home that meets their accessibility needs, to be settled. And that word home just keeps coming through. Of one family even, it's just made the comment, I can breathe now.
Finally, Warren Maddox, the executive director of Fredericton Homeless Shelters, Inc., described the issues facing those who support Fredericton's most vulnerable.
Our primary concern, I guess, is we know that there's going to be some belt tightening no matter which party come into power. So our biggest concern really at this point is to figure out how much cut there's going to be and where are they going to be. What we concern with and what we look at are housing options and where are we going to get the capital funding to be able to build. So the capital funding that we would get, we'd use to buy little apartment buildings or to build, little apartment buildings. Other ones would build larger ones, obviously. We need a chunk of that money not to go to municipalities or something like that where they siphon off their amount. So by the time it actually gets to the nonprofit, it's actually about 50% less than when it started. we would like that money to come directly to us in a way that is manageable for us to deal with, so that we, the reporting structures are in place. We have no problem with accountability. We're happy to be accountable. But being able to access that money is the critical part.
Next, we have a quick story about voting on the UNB campus and why it's important to engage with student voters. From April 13th to 16th, the UNB Student Union and Student Union Building hosted AltElxn Canada to allow students access to advanced polls on campus. Unlike recent elections, this year's advanced polling period fell directly in the middle of UNB's exams. This scheduling conflict caused significantly reduced voter turnout at the early polls. Here's UNBSU President Drashtant Varma.
I imagine they took into account exams across certain schools. Where it was in the middle of smack dab middle of exams, I think it might have had a little effect. I think generally we still got a pretty decent voter turnout. The turnout, I believe, was over the 4 days they were here, 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. on the 13th, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the 14th, 15th, and 16th. It was about 700 students over those 4 days, which I think is okay, not the greatest. I think in 2019 it was 600 students in 1 day or something like that, is from what they told me, I believe. So certainly not as what we would have hoped it to be, and I think exams did have an impact on that, but I think overall still not a bad turnout.
Drashtant elaborated on the process for working with AltElxn Canada on a federal election.
So similar to the provincial election we had in October, where AltElxn NB reached out to us, AltElxn Canada did reach out to us. In this case, AltElxn Canada is at campuses all across Canada for the same days. Something we helped them was in hiring students as poll workers. They need students to work the polls. They need poll workers. We were able to help to get a message on that. They were able to cover all the shifts for all the days they were there, which was great. They're short-term paid jobs, paid positions, good experience. So we were very glad students were able to fill those positions. They hired about 10 to 15 students. I could be wrong, but I'm generally I think that was just about it.
Drashtant also noted that there were some challenges in setting up the physical space for polling stations on campus.
We knew it was going to be the sub. Ideally, it was the folks at the sub here, Matt and Becky, so they were involved in that. When the conversation started happening, the sub, Matt, did approach me just to ensure, saying we might need to close more space than anticipated because of the equipment. So he was kind of getting the student union's thoughts on it. Like, do you think this would be worth doing where it's in the middle of exams? Because we're taking away student space during exams where it's a peak time, the sub is packed. And we thought initially what the idea was that the entire left side of Tim's was going to close down. And we said if that were going to be the case, and it would not be worth closing the sub. We understand voting is important. They couldn't do it upstairs because they have to close down as much space just as that, so it'd take away space there. The idea we presented then was McConnell Hall and the seniors common room. When you go enter McConnell Hall, there's a little room on the right. Would have enough space off to the side, not disturbing anything. Still a decently central spot on campus for students to go. But that did not end up happening because they were able to fit between the stairs, which is fine.
For those unfamiliar with the UNB campus map, McConnell Hall is the meal hall for students living in residence. Drashtant finished by explaining why it was necessary to ensure that students had access to advanced polls.
I think a lot of students, unfortunately, and not just students, a lot of people in general, Canadians, are of the thinking that, oh, my one vote's not really going to make a difference, it's not really going to matter, what's the point? They're of that thinking, and then they think, okay, I'm just not going to vote because it's not going to make a difference. And to be blunt, if you are of that thinking, yeah, your vote's not going to matter because you don't end up voting. My rationale behind it is that if people are of the thinking that, my one vote can make a difference, my one vote will make a difference, then more people in general will actually end up going voting, and collectively, yes, all your votes will make a difference. Elections are often won on the slimmest of margins, and absolutely every vote counts. So I think people there perhaps needs to be a shift, and not shift in attitude, but perhaps if people looked at it from a different perspective, it might give them some more clarity on that too. And by the time this airs, I imagine voting will still be going on. So to anyone listening, if you haven't voted yet, please make the time to go vote, student or not. I think students in particular have a unique opportunity to present different ideas and different perspectives that perhaps older folks wouldn't consider. And one way to do that is through voting. So absolutely go and vote if you have not done so yet.
I have a quick piece now on accessibility to voting among Fredericton's most vulnerable. It's no surprise that some demographics tend to vote more than others. A group that's often underrepresented are Fredericton's most vulnerable. The executive director of Fredericton Homeless Shelters, Inc., Warren Maddox, describes some of the ways that his shelters encourage political engagement and the difficulties facing shelter residents.
It's an interesting election. We're highly supportive of elections. The shelters always have been. We make sure that there's a polling station within 60 feet of the shelter's door. We have our consent, our forms to verify someone's address. So, as long as they have an ID in that form that says, yep, they're a resident of the shelters, they can vote, which is really important, especially for vulnerable people, the vulnerable sector, to be able to vote, to have a voice. So we go out of our way to make sure that happens, both with Elections Canada, and then I sit on an advisory board for Elections NB. So voting is really important, and irrespective of whom you're voting for, the fact that you get up and go out and vote is critical. It's our country, it's part of what we do, and it's, in my honest opinion, it should be a mandatory thing. Like if you don't vote, then there better be a good reason. Otherwise, get your butt off the couch and go vote.
Warren described how residents at Fredericton's homeless shelters might differ in their political priorities.
A lot of the people, they're living day to day and trying to survive. What a bunch of wanks in Ottawa say really doesn't make a whole lot of difference to you. They're looking for consistency. I think they're patriotic and have no intention or desire to become American. They want basically a chance to live a good, healthy life. And whoever has the opportunity to deliver that to them is who they should vote for, whether they believe that to be, a conservative person or a liberal person or NDP, Green. There's even a communist guy in town. I was surprised. I looked at things. We got a communist guy. That's got to be a tough row to hoe. But whoever it is, that you need to have your say and your ability to speak and say, I need this. Where's the support that we need to make this happen?
Finally, I'm going to rerun a piece that aired a few weeks ago about Pierre Poilievre's visit to Fredericton.
Fascist pigs have got to go. Hey, hey! Ho, ho! You fascist pigs.
On March 31st, 2025, roughly 30 people gathered outside of the New Brunswick Provincial Exhibition Centre in Fredericton to protest the arrival of Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre was scheduled to host a Canada First rally, the first of these rallies on the East Coast. The weather at the event was as unfriendly as the protesters' chants, with one person on the picket line describing it as
moist and feisty.
After roughly 45 minutes of protesting at the rally's side entrance, the Fredericton police force shut the door. Rally attendees and protesters then moved to the front entrance, where the police only admitted a handful more attendees before locking these doors as well. There was confusion outside as to whether the doors were closed due to protesters or because of limited capacity.
It's just unfortunate that we're stuck in the rain.
Another point of contention was whether protesters were holding up traffic. Many rally attendees accused the protesters of not letting cars through.
They blocked a car from driving through.
However, the protesters later allowed an ambulance through their picket line. A black Jeep also circled the exhibition center several times during the protest. Each time it approached the picket line, the protesters stepped aside to let the vehicle through. The protesters' concerns were mixed, although they were united by a shared contempt for Poilievre. Here's Dr. Krista Mullally.
I'm a gynecologist here in Fredericton with a really vested interest in healthcare for everyone. I have a practice that includes a lot of trans people, and I found it really concerning when Poilievre talked about there only being two genders, because it's true there are two biological sexes, but erasing gender identity, I think, is a really big deal, and it's a really big dog whistle for, I think, a greater agenda.
I knew it.
I'd like to know more about policy. I'd like to know less slogans. I'd like to hear about a vision for a future of Canada that is focused on including everyone, to making sure everyone is safe.
Another protester voiced concerns rooted in an international perspective. Here's Valerie.
I'm originally from France. It feels like the rise of fascism has started in Canada. He's everything I'm standing against. My grandma, she is 104, was saying to me the other day, like, it started like this just before the Second World War as well. And this is very much what I'm fighting against now.
Finally, June Patterson, the Communist Party of Canada's candidate for the Fredericton-Oromocto riding, was on the picket line.
I don't like Pierre Poilievre, and I don't like the idea of him being in our town, and I want to make him feel unwelcome. I think he wouldn't negotiate in our best interests with Trump for the tariffs, and our province is quite susceptible to the tariffs, so I don't think it would be good for the people here.
On the other side of the protest, rally attendees explained why they supported Poilievre and the concerns they hoped he will address if elected. Here's Melina Sharp.
I'm here to support our new Prime Minister, hopefully.
What's your biggest concern going into the election?
Gosh, there's so many. The economy, just everything, the gas and the inflation and people working hard and the income taxes, and it goes on and on.
Another attendee, Adam Celeste, drove all the way from St. John to hear Poilievre speak.
Drove up here for the Pierre Poilievre rally. As you can hear in the background, they got a lot of protesters here. So now they locked the doors, won't let anybody in, and now we're all stuck in the rain, right? Yeah. But no, like, we're smart. We know what's going on. We respect free speech. We don't care. Like, they can be here all they want. Big waste of time and for whatever these guys are protesting about.
Finally, Pam Ellen LeBlanc, the Green Party candidate for the Fredericton-Oromocto riding, also attended the event and described the atmosphere outside the building.
I think people are angry, but they're also being very respectful. And they're angry, they're upset, they feel threatened. But in true New Brunswick fashion, they just let a car through of somebody who is here for the rally. And they've told people, shame on you and things like that. But I just always appreciate peaceful protest.
I contacted the Conservative Party rally organizers at the event for a comment, but I did not receive a response in time for publication. To close out the show, we have a contribution from a Fredericton High School student who's doing some volunteer journalism here at the station. Mikriel Manga interviewed her fellow classmates last week. Here's what they had to say about the election.
On April the 10th, I managed to interview some of the Fredericton High School students on the upcoming federal election, and most of the people did not know anything about it, but here is some responses from 4 different high school students. Firstly, I asked them on what they thought about this election.
My name is Ahmed. I'm in grade 11. I think it's not really much of an election. I feel like most people that I met are fed up with the Liberal Party and just want to get rid of it.
Hi, my name is Arib Fatima and I'm in grade 11. I think it's pretty interesting that we're having an election already, especially that Trudeau's resigning. But from my perspective, as a I'm an immigrant to Canada, but now I'm a citizen, so I've lived here for around 7 years, and I never really found politics very. I never thought I'd be interested in politics. I've never had much knowledge on it until living here so much. When because I came from Saudi Arabia, but I was born in Pakistan, and in Saudi Arabia, it was never really talked about in school, politics and stuff like that, until I came to FHS.
So my name is Nora and I'm grade 12. Well, I've never heard of it before, so I'm not really sure. I'm just learning about it.
My name's Esther Birunji and I'm in grade 12. I think it's going to be really impactful. It's going to be it's going to change. It's going to be a big change for the country.
Secondly, I asked them who they think is best for Canada during this time of suffering, or what the result would be based on this upcoming federal election.
I feel most probably Mark Carney would win. I don't have much knowledge on the other candidates, but I just feel right now we're a lot of people are very liberal in the country, especially where we live right now in Fredericton. I feel we're very diverse and a lot of people have the same beliefs as the Liberals, and since we already Justin Trudeau won and Mark Carney's basically replacing him, I feel it just makes sense that Mark Carney would be the replacement.
I think the Blue Party will win.
I don't really have an opinion on that right now.
I feel Mark Carney would also be the best candidate for that as well. I feel he has good views and he has the right experiences, and he's just he's the best fit for the position in my opinion.
None. Has each of them is given a bad and a good vibe, so I'm not pretty sure yet.
I think Dave Melanson.
Thirdly, was if 16 years old can vote in the issues that they were facing.
In my personal opinion, I feel I don't have a very popular opinion on this. I don't think that 16-year-olds should be able to vote, just because I feel a lot of people are misinformed, and just like myself, I don't know too much. So I guess my beliefs could also be a little bit biased, but just from hearing and seeing stuff on social media. But I feel you really need to be informed more and you need to have like the maturity to make like these big decisions because it's like a decision that's going to affect the entire country.
Yeah, because they're practically an adult, so they can share their own opinion.
I think so. Yeah, because they have an opinion too.
I'd say like one of the most major issues like I'm personally experiencing is probably related to like the healthcare system, and also how long it takes for like people to just like go through like medical school, and just how hard it is for that. And like my mom, she used to be a dentist, and when we were in Saudi Arabia, and when we moved here, because she has a foreign license, she's not really able to pursue unless she retakes the exam, but she has to put in a lot of money for that and basically restart her license. And I feel like it's not fair. It should make it a little bit easier for people, foreign medical field people coming from the medical field, and also just anything related to like that aspect of jobs.
I would say in terms of, accommodation in Canada, it's been difficult because the housing rates have been going up, and we're trying to find a house, but it's really difficult in this time.
Lastly, what's the impact of this election and what change it will bring to Canada?
Well, politicians always say that they will do a lot of things and stuff like that, but from my experience, nothing big ever happens, no matter what. It'll probably be something minor.
I think I could actually change a lot of things, especially if we switch to conservative. I think that would make a huge impact. Especially like the way like people's rights and just like the way a lot of things function within the country. But I feel like it could also go really good. It could be really positive or negative, just depending on different things. And
I'm not sure.
It will bring change.
Change a little bit, not much.
I feel like a lot of people might. I'm not sure too much about like the conservatives and what they're doing, but I just feel like because I know that they're not really like letting immigrants in, so like the diversity might change based on that, and maybe like because the abortion clinics also might be banned or abolished because of this. So I think that would be something that would be a major change.
Yeah, it might.
Compared to the former leadership, I would say that it's gonna become better.
Thank you so much, Fredericton High School student. This was Mikael from CHSR 97.9 FM.
And that's it for CHSR's election coverage. Once again, this program is in collaboration with the National Campus and Community Radio Association's AltElxn 2025. For more information, please visit altelxn.ca. That's AltElxn.ca. This show was written and produced by myself, Aidan Keenan, with contributions from Mikael Manga. I've been your host, Aidan Keenan, for CHSR 97.9 FM, reporting from Fredericton, New Brunswick.